Well, hello, welcome to Music Recollections. This is our first podcast. I'm your co host, Brian. And after years of talking about it, my great buddy and I are launching this show. We're very excited about it. We're going to dive into the stories of music lovers and how music has changed their lives. Whether it's through albums, concerts, or unforgettable moments, we're here to explore the soundtrack of your life. So I'm going to pass it over to my co host, James.
Yeah, B, I'm just so excited to get this started. And, we've been talking about this for a while now. And it just seems like we've had some interactions with some music fans at concerts or just our, um, everyday lives, talk to people who have really great stories and just a really great passion for music. And I know we've always kind of shared. A lot of similar music taste in music, and but it's always interesting to hear from others' experiences as well. Um, but yeah, just super excited. I mean, for me, music is just one of those things that just really it's transformative. Just kind of thinking about some of the musical tastes that I've had throughout the years, and that changes, and it's just one of those thrills for me is just finding that new band that you just kind of like and no one's kind of heard of yet, and you can kind of share it with others, and it's one of those experiences I think that kind of brings people together. So I really appreciate us, doing this, and I'm super excited to talk to others and kind of share that and just passion for music because it really is transformative to me. How about you? What do you
Oh,
think?
definitely, James. Oh, no, you nailed it. And we go way back. We were back in, this is in the mid 90s. So we won't say our age, but we just connected immediately. And one of the things we connected with, of course, was music and also, of course, sports. I would say equally, James, with both music and sports, just having
Yeah, for
that
sure.
passion for both. And we just have been to so many awesome concerts together and shared so many amazing experiences together. And although I'm in Atlanta and you're in the Olympia, Washington area, it's still amazing how we connect and we just immediately connect over music. We hear a song and we're like, man, remember we heard that back in 1995 or whatever. So
Right. Yeah.
this is going to be a lot of fun, and I'm totally stoked about it. And like I said, even though we're sort of a far distance away, music is what brings us all back together, and especially in today's world, just with we're so divided, and we've always talked about music, food, and sports bring people together. So this is going to be a lot of fun, our inaugural episode. So what we're going to do is ask each other about some different experiences with music. So I'll kick it off, James, and ask you, what about your first concert experience?
Oh man, it's a little embarrassing, but there is a little bit of a story behind this. So I was in high school, and at the time, I was living in Central Florida, and there really wasn't too many opportunities to see concerts. It was either Jacksonville or Daytona Beach, and so I kind of lived in between those two venues. And seeing a concert, it was kind of a big deal. So I was dating this girl at the time, and she really liked Richard Marx, and so I had never been to a concert before, and the venue was, gosh, in Daytona Beach, and the headliner was, REO Speedwagon, and, so we went, and, it was interesting, a little embarrassing. I mean, there's a lot of great REO Speedwagon fans out there, so I don't really wanna offend anyone, but, it was good. It was just, an interesting experience. I'd never been in an arena before, um, and so, I guess REO Speedwagon is now considered classic rock, which is kinda weird, but I always considered them a little popish at the time, but, um not really my taste in music now, but, certainly it was a great, first memory, from this kid in rural Central Florida, kinda just getting that experience with just a massive amount of people and, everyone kind of sharing that experience together, so it was fun. It was a lot of fun, and it made my girlfriend happy, so, it all worked out. How about you, man?
That's totally important. 100%, James. That's very cool. How old were you?
Oh, man, I think I must have been 16 or something like that. And I always had some, back then my tastes in music were more classic rock, but it was never really REO Speedwagon. But I have a new appreciation for them. And whenever I do hear a song, streaming or something like that, it does kind of bring me back to that experience.
That's right. I want to say they're still touring or they were opening up for someone I saw
Yeah.
about a year ago. It's amazing they still have legs, some of these bands.
Right. Yeah. And that's what's the cool thing too is that um, a lot of these bands that we kind of grew up with are now trying to tour again, and I never had the opportunity growing up to see these bands that I liked, but now as an older adult, it's fun. Yeah, now that opportunity's kind of opened up a little bit. So yeah, there's a lot of cool concerts out there to see. So how about you, B? I mean, what was your first concert experience?
Yeah, for me, I've mentioned this to you, James. It's a little embarrassing. It was actually the Jackson Five. So it's kind of funny to think about it. But I mean, thinking back on it, it was pretty cool to see, Michael, legendary musician, and
Oh yeah,
probably for us, he was probably like our Elvis during, in the 80s. And this was probably 1985, I want to say. I was a junior in high school. So I vividly remember my friend calling me and saying, I've got 2 tickets to the Jackson Five. And I'm like, man, I'm not sure if I want to go to that. But
yeah.
this was around the time that Eddie Van Halen collaborated with Michael Jackson on Beat It. I want to say it
Oh
was
yeah.
85 or 86. I'm thinking, okay, maybe Eddie will show up. And it was, that's kind of when I was like, okay, I'll go. But I remember back then the tickets were, and we thought they were really expensive. I want to say it was $50, and we were thinking, man, that was like $200. So what we did, we saved up. I paid him, and yeah, we went to the concert. It actually ended up being pretty good, but unfortunately, Eddie wasn't there. But the second concert I remember too vividly was going to U2 at the
Oh
Omni in
wow.
Atlanta, and that was super cool because that was my favorite band. And this was I was in 11th grade, I remember. I want to say it was Unforgettable Top Fire Tour.
Oh
And I
wow.
remember we got the tickets back then. You could buy the tickets at a place called Turtles,
Yeah.
and even Macy's. You could camp out and buy concert tickets, which was kind of surreal thinking about it. I remember I'm the youngest of my family going to the mall with my mom, and I'm like, why are these like teenagers camping out? Going. She said, oh, I think they're here to buy tickets. So that was kind of a unique thing. I think that stopped probably in the early 90s, but there was a music store called Turtles, this is way before internet and everything like that. So that was pretty unique. We did camp out for another U2 concert a few years later. So that's an experience I'll never forget. So
Oh yeah,
yeah,
how cool. I mean, yeah, I'm sure there's a lot of stories that people have just about waiting in line and passing the time. I mean, a lot of these fans would camp out the night before and spend the night in front of the ticket place. And yeah, I'm sure there's gonna be some stories there too that we can hear.
definitely. And that's what we want to talk to those listeners who went through those experiences. And because I remember, of course, playing my friend back then, of course, had the jam box playing Unforgettable Fire. And of course, everyone's playing different U2 albums. I want to say War was before that. I remember War was being played, and
Wow.
that's what was super cool. And unfortunately, teenagers today will never experience that, which is really sad.
Yeah, but oh man, what a cool concert that must have been, B. I mean, they were just on the verge of just, really exploding, and they were just gaining popularity year after year. But man, you kind of got in there a little early. Because I remember I think I was first introduced to you my freshman year of college. So it was kind of later.
Yeah, a couple
And
years
then
later. Well,
yeah.
you're right. I remember Time Magazine had a cover, Rock's hottest band, and it was U2, and it had sort of like flames in the background. And I had a cool poster my brother got me at Christmas. I remember I had that hanging up. I think it was either in my room or dorm room, somewhere like that. I would say it was my dorm room. So everyone loved that poster. I forgot where he got it, but that was super cool. Of course, this was way before internet, so even buying things like rock posters were a cool thing. You'd have to go to a record store or somewhere like. Remember, there was a record store called Chapter Three Records, kind of independent record store. It was sort of a old rocker type guy, something out of the movies. So I'll never forget going in there and seeing him, and that was cool. This was around the time Guns N' Roses was hot too, because I remember him saying, "You got to listen to Guns N' Roses. They're glowing white hot right
Oh,
now."
yeah. Oh, yeah.
So I'll never forget that. That was probably like 87 or 88. So then I bought Appetite for Destruction. And man, that was an incredible album. Just hearing Sweet Child of Mine, that opening riff,
Yeah,
it
yeah.
just brings me back, like we were talking, brings you back to high school or college or whenever you heard that song.
Yeah, for me, yeah, music is like a time machine sometimes. You hear these songs, especially if they're not played often, and you think, oh man, the first time I heard this was I was doing this, I was here. And it really just kind of takes me back sometimes. And I love that about music. But man,
Oh,
did,
absolutely.
were you able to buy any like concert t-shirts or any merch or anything like that back then?
Thinking back then, I think the first concert T-shirt I ever bought was it was actually John Cougar, and that was maybe about a year later, like freshman in college. I remember seeing it was back then. It was John Cougar. Then of course he changed it to John Cougar Mellencamp.
Yeah.
I remember having his T-shirt. I want to say it was maybe it was before Scarecrow, but having that concert. But that was a cool experience
Oh
too, waiting
man.
in line for the concert T-shirt. How about you?
Yeah.
What was your first one?
I don't remember ever getting any concert T-shirts, but I just remember, especially in high school, after a big concert, you see everyone would wear their concert T-shirts the next day, and it was always kind of fun to see. And of course, if you sat, behind them, you'd be able to read all the different cities that the band was touring, and yeah, I've always wanted one of those concert T-shirts. It seems like I just never really could afford it after, buying all that, or spending all that money on the ticket itself. But
No, that's right. You're right about that because I remember kind of like you said, Jane, feel like a late bloomer being in ninth grade and the kid. I remember Van Halen, of course, was huge, and these students were talking about going to see Van Halen and the opening song. I'm like, man, that would be so awesome to
right,
do. And just I'm definitely a late bloomer, and I'm thinking, wow, that seems so far away to be able to go to something like that.
yeah.
Yeah, definitely. What about your music taste? Has it changed, let's say, since high school or college?
Oh, for sure. Like I said, I think around high school I was into more like the classic rock, and for me, classic rock is probably a little bit different definition than some, but like Van Halen, and I was a big Journey fan. And then it seems like when I went to college, um, it was more like uh, college rock and things like that, and I liked The Cure, Depeche Mode, and REM. I was a really big REM fan, still am. Um, yeah, I think, just kind of thinking about some of the really great albums I can just go back to and listen to anytime. And probably Murmur is one of those. Just classic REM albums are just, every song is good. But yeah, just being in Athens, Georgia, you almost have to kind of like the B-52s and REM and all those kind of bands. And, being in college too just allowed me to kind of, talk to others and kind of hear about what their tastes in music are. And, I love that, sharing of, interests. And I was turned on to a lot of different, we had an independent college radio station and kind of listening to that. And um, yeah, and then, kind of in the 90s, I kind of went with, a lot of people who kind of looked at, was interested in grunge. And so loved Pearl Jam and Soundgarden and Alice in Chains and things like that. Yeah, I just, kinda like more classic rock-ish, but also just really appreciate all kind of music because there's just so many great artists out there um yeah, I don't wanna limit myself to just one thing. So how about you? I mean, has your kind of journey changed a lot since high
Yeah,
school, or what do you think?
man, brother, we're really on the same page with those bands. I would say
Yeah,
for me, in a lot of ways, it stayed the same. You mentioned, U2, The Cure, REM, B-52s, all those awesome, awesome bands. But even the classic rock bands like The Who, which I think we saw them together. We've seen so many incredible shows together. We'll have to talk about that in a few minutes.
yeah.
But I always wanted to see the Red Hot Chili Peppers. I think we talked about that, but never saw them. But for me, kind of the same. I love the classic rock, and I still love that college rock sound. But like we've talked, I guess just we're older, not we're really in tune with who the new college rock bands are. But I still like that sound, whether it's on Sirius Radio, here on the college rock station. But it's interesting. We both went to the University of Georgia. We're passionate Bulldogs. We were there at the same time, but we didn't know each other, which is amazing. That we ran into each other. We never do it, but could have been at the 40 Watt or one of those cool places like that.
Oh, for sure. Yeah, right?
But yeah,
Yeah.
Athens is such an incredible place. My brother was there when the B-52s and REM, got their start in the early 80s. And, he says he remembers, Michael Stipe. I think he was an art student and he dressed like an art student and was really like a recluse sort of. And, you'd see him around campus and see him, with 1,000 people. And so that's cool. But I'm with you, brother, man. I think Murmur and Reckoning are two of my favorite REM albums, but I'd put them up there. It's interesting. They quit really early in their career, but for me, sort of, they almost got over creative their last album. So
I agree. Yeah, when they did that one album where it was just we didn't have a live drummer anymore. Um, was it Bill Buck? He
yeah,
left the
that's right.
band.
Yeah, our Bill
Bill
Berry.
Berry, yeah, sorry. And ever yeah, after that, I kind of lost a lot of my passion for REM. And they were very arty at that point, and very very creative. Though I will say that one thing is they really didn't make an album that really sounded like each other. They were just really wanting to like recreate themselves all the time, and just so creative. And so I give them a lot of credit for that. And really, if you look at like their history, you can kind of pick out, really great songs from each decade that they did, and they really did, keep up with, the change in times. Um, and so I give them a lot of credit, and they kind of like just pieced out like right at the top too, which was kind of cool because everyone's clamoring to get that band back together, and they've just been pretty adamant about kind of just keeping it as is. So pretty neat. Yeah.
Yeah, they really did. You're right, James. They quit in their prime, but there was nothing like that sound. They had that unique sound that was just totally different than everyone else's. So the B-52s were so out there and just so different. That's what was incredible about them too. And there's some other great Athens bands. Another one called Pylon and Love Tractor. Love Tractor was more of an instrumental, but those were super unique bands. That Athens, Georgia, was a very unique place in the early '80s for
Oh my
certain.
gosh. Yeah. And how cool was it for us to be there in the kind of later 80s, but still you could still kind of feel that vibe. I mean, I would love to see a concert at the Georgia Theater. And I think it's been remodeled since we were, going to school there. And gosh, I mean, that's just such a great venue and just a lot of great history within those walls for sure.
Yeah, definitely. It burnt down, I think, within the last like 7 or 8 years, but they rebuilt it. So we'll definitely have next time you come down, we have to do that. I know we went to Athens last year for a football weekend, but we definitely have to go to a show there. I think what we did, we saw the Dogs play. They showed the game there when we left early, or we watched the game there. They had the game on at the Georgia Theater, but for certain that would be awesome. Someone even told me Kenny Chesney, the country guy, played there a few years ago.
Oh, okay.
So yeah, I think they have all kinds of different bands. But yeah, Athens is just such an incredible place, and I'm not sure what the music scene is currently, just us being out of there, but I'm sure it's still pretty unique and still pretty good.
Yeah. Kinda like with Seattle too, they had their kinda peak, at least, in the '90s, everyone knew the Seattle sound and, Nirvana, of course, was huge, but they still have a great music scene here, and, just, different style of bands. I think we're trying to outgrow the grunge scene, but, really great, bands have come from Seattle. So that's kind of cool to kind of be in that area to see that.
Yeah, definitely. I remember, James, we saw that movie Singles with Matt
Oh
Dillon.
yeah,
That was cool. I think that sort of captured the entire Seattle rock scene in the early
yeah,
90s. I think Pearl Jam and Soundgarden, Eddie Vedder, they were in the movie.
yeah, and yeah, that's a great soundtrack too. If you ever get a
Yeah,
chance
oh, it
to
totally is.
yeah,
Yes. And weren't you telling me that you've heard Eddie Vedder's like super down to earth, like people have seen him out in his yard and like he'll wave at people and he just seems like a really cool guy.
yeah. I'm sure he has a couple of different houses, but he does have a house in Seattle, and I've talked to his neighbor actually, and she was just saying he's just so generous, and sometimes we'll give her like pre-release type stuff, and just a really, really nice guy. Both him and his wife and kids, and you kind of picture some of these guys, especially we saw Pearl Jam, and he was kind of at his peak, and I think he was drinking at the time and stuff like that. But these are also kind of family men as well, when they're not on the stage. So yeah, what he just has a great reputation in this area as just being a really great guy, and talk about and he's just a big promoter of local music, and vinyl stores and things like that. So he has a great reputation around here.
No, that's super cool. I remember REM, speaking of that, giving back. They were sort of ahead of their time, like on environmental issues and everything. They were always involved heavily with that, like Michael Stipe and Bill Berry, Mike Mills, all those guys were always gave back. So I always heard really good things about them. And then, of course, B-52s, I didn't get to see them. If you were down here, James, we would definitely would have gone, but they just played in the new Classic Center a couple months ago, and they named the hockey team the Rock
Oh yeah,
Lobsters, of course, after the classic song. So that's
yeah,
cool. But I think they've been a big part of that hockey team. So it's kind of surreal to think, 30, 40 years later, they're coming back and a hockey team's named after them. Like, who would have
yeah,
thought that back in
right,
1982?
yeah. Yeah, there was just, yeah, the typical party band, and yeah, that was a great concert that I went to. We could talk about some of our great concerts, and one for me was just this kind of impromptu concert that the B-52s were playing on University of Georgia campus, and it was right behind my dorm. So I literally just walked like probably 50 feet from my dorm room, and saw them play. And it was pretty cool. It was standing room only, and it was just out in the field of grass. But yeah, really really cool concert. And of course, they played all their classic kind of party hits, and it was just a lot of fun. Um,
That's awesome. I heard about that, James. I think I was there, of course. That was around 88 or so.
yeah,
I want to say it was at Legion Field. For some
yeah,
reason, I think I wasn't there, but I remember hearing about that. And it's interesting. Remember when we were there, REM would play under like a wheel of
oh yeah,
cheese or some different name, and
yeah,
they'd play like at the 40 watt. One time I saw Peter Buck with some friends. He played with a band called the Normaltown Flyers. So that was kind of cool to see
yeah,
him up there jamming. But there was rumor, Stipe was going to be there and all those guys. So
yeah.
that was super cool that they did that. What about some of your favorite albums and concerts? You mentioned some albums.
Yeah, gosh, I think artistically, I I kinda go to, Rumors by Fleetwood Mac. I mean, that's, just a really good album. I think from, like, track number 1 to the last track. Um, but gosh, I mean, there's just so many, it's really hard to choose from. How about you?
Yeah, I'm gonna have to go, James, with the Joshua Tree. Like we've
Oh,
talked this
okay.
before.
Yeah.
If you could get three good songs on an album, then it's considered really good. If you can get four, it's great. But I'd stay with Joshua Tree. It's like 8 or 10. But also that Murmur and Reckoning. I think every song on there I like because
Right.
I love Pearl Jam, but some of them, again, I think sometimes they could get over creative on
Hmm.
some of their songs, and you'd have like three great songs, but then some I kind of just couldn't get into. But personally for me, but those are some of my favorites.
Yeah, and to me, like, there's just so many different artists. Right now, everyone's streaming music, and we get to hear, songs. But some of these like concept albums are just really, really impressive and really cool. I encourage everyone to kind of listen to those, and they do kind of arrange these songs in a particular order for a particular reason, and really to kind of capture the whole. Um, album itself, you kind of need to listen, to every single song in sequential order sometimes. And I think that's kind of lost a little bit today, with just streaming. Um, but yeah, do people really buy like, full albums anymore, or is that
Yeah,
pretty
I was
rare?
going to ask you that, James. Do they even call it an album?
I
We're
don't
showing
know.
our age,
Yeah.
I guess. Because the same thing. It's funny if I want to hear a song, I'll usually go on YouTube, kind of thing. Or, I have the Shazam app and I'll use that, but I'll just, play like a live song on YouTube.
Yeah. Yeah, so I think some of that is lost. There's so many great songs that we never really get to hear, because the streaming services usually play the hits or things like that. I've always enjoyed kind of listening to those B-side songs, and some of those are just really, really good. They just never get any airtime. So,
Yeah, definitely. And I remember just cracking open that album. It was so cool. Just running home to you couldn't wait to play it. But just like opening up and the art, and then they usually had like a pull out a booklet. Because I
oh
remember
yeah,
vividly growing up, my brother bought Alice Cooper $1 Billion Baby, and it was
oh yeah,
so strange. You opened it and like this huge poster popped out.
yeah.
Vividly remember that, or Kiss, some of those albums he had, and I want to say he had the Leonard Skinner album that right before they had that plane crash, and
Oh
it
wow,
was called Street Survivors, and he had that. I think they stopped printing that album cover. So yeah, just the uniqueness of those album covers. And of course, when we were in college, it was CDs, and
yeah.
there was some cool stuff on those. But you're right. Unfortunately, yeah, young people will never capture that, or going to the store and buying it, and can't wait to listen to it, bringing it home, type thing.
Yeah. Yeah, like Sticky Fingers, from the Rolling Stones. I mean, that's a classic kind of album cover. I mean, so many great ones. Yeah, I mean, they are really kind of considered art, I think. And yeah, the liner notes, and then especially with REM, you're like, what is Michael Stipe even saying right here? So, sometimes it would be helpful to have those liner notes, like, oh, okay, so those are the lyrics. But yeah, I'm sure there's still your hardcore fans that kind of buy albums, if that's what they're called, and kind of listen to all the different songs and things like that. But yeah, what about concerts, man? I mean, what do you think? Your top two concerts are.
Top two. Well, James, I'm gonna have to put the one that we just last saw. The one with Sammy was
Oh
incredible when he came
man,
down in July. That was just awesome. It was just surreal to be there, and the sound and just their energy, and they were having fun. It was him and Michael Anthony. I mean, I'm getting goosebumps thinking about it. Like
yeah,
you were saying, James, I thought the same thing. It brought me back to like sitting in my room at home in 1986 in Dunwoody, Georgia, where I grew up,
right,
listening to, Sammy and Dave and all those guys. So it was really incredible. But man, and what I think he's like 75, Sammy Hagar, but he brought the energy of like a 35-year-old.
oh my gosh, yeah, and his voice is still crystal clear. His range is amazing, and Joe Satriani. If there's anyone on this earth that could, get close to uh, you know, um, Eddie's guitar playing, it's him. I mean, it was just spectacular. I was just blown away. I mean, every single song, I was just amazed. I mean, because some of those. yeah, that guitar playing is so technical, and I was just so amazed that he just picked it up, and yeah, it really brought me back. I mean, we were kind of saying that that was kind of the music I kind of leaned towards in high school, and yeah, it took me back. I mean, I remember in my room in high school, I'd put 1984, the classic Angel smoking. Album cover of Van Halen, kind of prop that up in my room, and yeah, it just took me back, and all the Van Hagar era, where OU 812, and there was just so many different really cool songs that came from that kind of area as well, and yeah, it just took me back. It was so good. It was so good, and I hear that they have a Vegas residency, and if there's anyone that hasn't, seen them, man, I'd recommend if you just go see them in Vegas. I'm sure they're awesome. Do you know if that's at the Sphere, or where is that? Do you know?
That's a good question. I was going to look that up, man, James. That'd be so much fun if we could go to that. That
Oh,
would be awesome. I assume it probably is, but
yeah,
you never know. It could be in one of these casinos or whatever. Because I think David Lee Roth played. He had a residency there like 4 or 5 years ago. Someone I work with went to see him. But man, getting back to Satriani, that 5150, that song was so
yeah,
technical, and they
yeah,
said after Eddie left the band, they never touched it because it was so technical. But I'm just getting goosebumps thinking of that opening riff. It was just a really great rock show, and like we've talked before, when you're a rocker, man, you just feel it in your chest and your soul. There's just something different about it. You hear that like pounding in your
yeah,
chest kind of thing. It's just unreal. And the sound, man, was so good. It was
yeah,
at some amphitheater up in Alpharetta.
yeah. Yeah, who knew? Yeah, and that's one thing too, like, when you listen to an album, I'm gonna keep on referring it to that. Um, but when you hear this live, I mean, you do feel it like in your soul. I mean, just the drum licks and everything like that, you just feel it. And yeah, it just elevates that whole experience. I mean, because you've heard these songs before, but when you hear them live, it's just there's nothing that can replace that. But yeah, I mean, and we have to, talk about Jason Bonham too, man. I mean, can you
I was just
imagine?
thinking about that.
Dude,
Yeah.
I mean, that was so cool. I mean, it really was like the best crew um to play those songs together. It was just amazing. So
It
yeah,
was, yeah,
yeah,
that's
that was a
right.
great experience. And plus, I will say too, part of the concert experience for me too is just going with someone, and talking about it, and sharing that experience with someone. Yeah, we've been to so many concerts together, and kind of refer back to them every once in a while. And yeah, if you're with your significant other or a best friend or whatever, it's kind of a bonding experience. And that's just another cool thing about concerts and music. Uh,
It really is. And I'm thinking, James, too, when we saw, yeah, I think was it Plant Page and was it Bonham's son back then? I want to say that was incredible. And then Pearl Jam, I remember them playing Keep on Rockin' the Free World, the cover of Neil Young. That was unbelievable. So
yeah,
we've just seen so many incredible shows. And I want to say even someone's kind of random like Brian Ferry, who was like a
yeah,
classic songwriter. We saw him at the Fox.
yeah. No, that was great. That was great. Yeah, and then yeah, for me, I would probably say my top 2 are Plant Page with the symphony orchestra. That was just so cool. Because yeah, you always hear, like hardcore rock for Led Zeppelin, but when you have a symphony orchestra kind of back that up, it's just another experience altogether, and that was really, really cool. Um, and then probably, gosh, what would be my number 2? Probably the Rolling Stones. I was never a big fan, but a friend of ours, Mike Hayslip, so shout out to Mike Hayslip, and he was working security at this concert and somehow managed to get me in free. And I was like, yeah, okay, I'll listen to the Rolling Stones. Of course, I've always heard all their hits and things like that, but to see them live, I mean, Mick Jagger is such a great performer. Um, it's just amazing to watch, and yeah, he's still out there kicking it. Um, Yeah, it's just it was good. It was really good. So that was just kind of one of those, you just weren't really thinking I was really gonna enjoy it that much, but it's free, and then just being blown away. So how about
That's
you?
amazing. Yeah, I remember
Anything
you talking
else?
about that, James. I'd have to say also you too with my wife. I want to say it was one of our first dates back in, it was around 2000, and that was incredible. Back then, I guess it was Phillips, now it's State Farm. But I just remember that being so much fun there being with her, and she had never seen them before, and she loved them. And then another one, I went to Music Midtown. Remember those used to be really cool, James,
Oh,
and we had
yeah.
some fun at those. But I remember we snuck up to like the 10th row and saw David Lee Roth back. This was probably like 2001, and that was cool. And then with REM, probably my brother, we snuck up to like the 10th row at Chastain Park. The energy, James, is unreal when you get up that close to a
Oh,
concert,
man.
like a huge band. Somehow we got up there, but yeah, just so many fun shows. I'm thinking with my goddaughter Kathleen, who just got married. I had the privilege of marrying her and her great husband. We saw Coldplay together, and it was 2008, I want to say. And I wasn't really that hip on going because I'm like, oh, Coldplay, but that was just a great sound and just a great time. And you kind of remember I wasn't really going through a great time at work. Remember back when we were probation officers and it was a stressful job, and I remember it just being such a stress release going to see them, and that was just a lot of fun. So, just so many great memories, James, we've had. It's really dredging up all these awesome memories.
Yeah. Yeah, it's so cool, and really that's what we wanna kind of elicit out of other people, and, you and I, speaking of that, concert, we ran into, someone, that was talking about the early days of, was it Rush that she was talking about?
Yeah, I think it was Rush or Styx or someone like that.
Yeah. And so, yeah, people just have really great stories, and this is sort of the whole purpose of this podcast. And this is just the first episode, and we just kind of wanted to introduce ourselves to you and share a little bit more about our experiences and kind of why we're here and how passionate we are about music. But we really, the whole goal of this is to hear from others. So, Brian and I, in future episodes, will reach out to people who have just really great stories. And, we want to hear from you. And it doesn't have to be any particular genre of music. I think, there's such a wide variety of artists out there. We want to hear from everyone. And, the tagline to our music recollection podcast is soundtrack for the fans, and really that's what we want to hear from is your soundtrack. And so we want to hear from you. And yeah, thanks for listening today. And Brian, man, it's always great to kind of catch up with you, and really look forward to working on this project with you together. And I think we're gonna have a lot of fun and meet a lot of great people, and share a lot of stories. So yeah, if you get a chance, please subscribe to our YouTube channel. And we're always looking for bookings, for guests. So reach out to us. So we have a email, music.recollections@gmail.com. Again, it's music.recollections@gmail.com. I'd love to hear from you, and especially if you're a fan of music, we want to hear your soundtrack. So, yeah, anything else, B, you think you want to share before we kind of end things today?
Well, this has been amazing, James. This is so much fun. And like you said, we just want to hear from the listeners, and we'd love to have you as a guest, especially anyone who went to Woodstock or saw the Beatles or, the Who back in the 70s or even the Doors. Those would be really special. But anyone, if you've seen Taylor Swift or Beyonce, we'd also love to hear from you, and just all kinds of different music. Doesn't have to just be rock. I mean, we're obviously rockers, James, but
Yeah.
this has just been so great. I couldn't find a better person to do it with. So we just can't wait to do this. And we thank you all so much. And James, we also, do you want to close it out and talk about, we have a Instagram page.
Yeah, yeah, I will include that in the notes here, on the YouTube. Um, and yeah, please look for that as well. And we'll be posting some information about that. And so we'll also share another way of reaching out to us and trying to get on this podcast. And we'd love to hear from you.
Thanks again. Keep on rocking.
All right, keep on rocking. All right, thanks, V.